Hi friends, welcome back to Deep Dive with Nema Hakim, with me your host, Nema Hakim, where today we'll be talking about gender-based violence, the abortion law, the criminalizing of abortion, being over 25 and all that good stuff. So please tune in, like, comment, share and subscribe, and I will see you in the video. Hi friends, so today we have Lydia, Engaisi and Gervaz. Karibuni sana. I wanted us to have a look at the red flags that majority of us would ignore. You'd see a red flag where you see when this person gets angry, they like to shout, they like to throw plates against the wall. But you're like, no, he loves me. He wouldn't throw it at me. He just throws it at the wall and punches the wall. And you're like, okay, it's red, but you color it pink. You know? So I would like to go through some of the red flags you think.
So some red flags I noticed from my previous relationships was someone trying to isolate you from your friends, from your support system. That's always a big red flag because they're trying to make you reliant on them. So they prevent you from talking to your friends. They tell you there's certain types of people you can't be friends with, certain family members. So they try to control who is within your space. This is just on the non-physical side of it. But as you said, on the physical side of it, little things like temper flares, you know. For example, me right now, I can't be in a relationship with someone who speaks above a certain tone. Like if we're in an argument, if we're disagreeing on something and you speak to me above a certain level of voice, that's it. Like I'm not even negotiating that, you know. But it's small for me. In my experience, it was small things like that. How does someone react in the face of conflict, and how they speak to you, how they treat you, how they handle instances such as that. Yeah. So just some red flags.
Red flags. I think to know red flags, you have to have done some introspection on what you can and can't tolerate. That makes sense. So and that's why a lot of women end up in bad relationships, because to them this has never been an idea in their head that this is a bad relationship, right? Your friends, they come report to you that this happened. You've seen it in your family, so it seems normal. Maybe they know it feels bad, but the context is normal. So I think to identify the red flags, I think someone needs to be very clear on what a healthy relationship looks like to them. And I hope somewhere along the line they encounter someone who has that, embodies it, or at least someone or a couple that they could look up to in that sense. So I guess personally, red flags, I don't know. I think, what is a red flag? I just know it in my bones when I see it. So I really don't know. Yeah, I don't know how to put that into a list. But I guess that's one.
I don't know about red flags so much. I would say just from my friends who've gone through certain experiences, and maybe this is maybe a modification of what Engaisi just said about at some point, like there are people who maybe even in the course of your relationship 3-4 years down the road might change or have experienced something and become violent people or whatever it is, but there is a certain amount of I don't know, like there are things if you decide in advance, like just like Lydia said, like there's something that she has specifically decided that she does not want to become part of the dynamic of her relationship. So the moment she sees that, she is out. And these things, as much as we're objectively speaking about them now, I know people who are in problematic relationships and they know that they're in problematic relationships and they're not economically attached to this person or whatever it is, but they can't leave because of other entanglements that they have with this person, emotional, other things, that essentially you're at a point you're sort of like in too deep. And at some point you
What is
try.
in too deep?
So
I struggle to think of what is in too deep that you can't.
oh, you can definitely get out. So in too deep is essentially this. Uh, as you get to know someone, the extent of your emotional attachment to them increases. So there's this actually guy who wrote a book and says that intimacy is the goal of all relationship. So even if it's a shopkeeper you see every day, if you heard they died, you'd feel a little bit
Yeah.
of something because the sustained interaction is building something. So someone with whom you're intentionally building a relationship with, over time that attachment gets deeper and deeper, and the ease of which you can disengage becomes harder.
It's like a psychological cage.
So that means while you're entering a relationship, or like now I would recommend much early on, like just as you're evaluating a person, giving yourself a lot of time to try and make as much of an evaluation as you can, as much of a rounded one as you can, and not even sometimes even you see, I've seen people who just see a person primarily through like a very tiny window, and it's like, but this person has a whole bunch of issues, and you need to decide like, okay, these things, once you like put your lives together in that proximity, some of those issues will become your issues, or they will be lived out on you, and you need to have decided if that's something you want to be part of the dynamic of the relationship. But setting that standard and trying as hard as you can, because again, the way you feel is what's most likely to corrupt it at any given time, where it's like, okay, I know this is probably not the best idea, but probably I'll still do it. But essentially going in, deciding in advance what you think you deserve. There are people who absolutely, if a guy even attempts to hit him, they're gone, because they have decided that I do not like physical violence. Again, will never be the dynamic of my relationship. And someone will be like, well, if he slaps me, maybe, but if he does this, then if he then that, and then like, so putting that line somewhere and just keeping, despite how you feel or whatever it is, and never letting another person cross it for you, I think can add to some protection in terms of like what might happen down the road. Yeah.
Could we go into that could go into boundaries as well? I feel like we're going to sway further away from the GBV, but I promise to bring it back. So that could go into boundaries as well, because you'll find when you're new in a relationship, someone does something you don't like, but you're like, you know what, I can fix him. I can fix them. And that's the thing with Bob the Builder.
Or maybe it was or maybe it was a one-time mistake, right? It wasn't intentional. These are
And
the
that's
things-
how it starts.
Exactly, and those are the things you need to keep track of. Like those, I don't wait for a pattern to repeat itself. I
you believe them the first time. Like,
exactly. The first time you show me who you are. As you said, it's very important to set boundaries right up front, and that's how I function in my friendships, relationships, family relationships as well. I have clear cut boundaries with every single one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So on top of boundaries, you had said something about getting to know this person on the onset. So you're on your first date. Of course, you're like, oh, instead of asking the important questions, you're there asking, what's your favorite color? What are you allergic to? You will find out what they're allergic to later on. Trust me. And you will find out their favorite color one way or another. But one thing you will have such a hard time finding out. Yeah? Pardon?
Your favorite color is black and blue.
Yeah. Yeah, so you need to find out how do you deal with your anger? How, like, what's, for example, just go as far back as say, how's your relationship with your mother? So that way you know, how is your relationship with this person that actually raised you? And when growing up in your household, I know this might be too intimate to ask on a first date, but are they?
No, it's not.
It's not?
I mean, why are you in that first date anyway?
Right?
Yeah?
Like, what are we doing if we're not going to talk about the important things?
Yeah. Okay.
If you're there for a free meal, I guess.
I
Right.
guess. Yeah, but if it's not the free meal, you should ask. Yeah. So ask the important questions. Ask, what do you do when you're angry? Are you in therapy? Is there anything you're currently struggling with? Do you have an addiction? Do you have this, that, and the third? So that will help you determine if this person is getting a second date or not. Yeah.
But
However.
I think for a lot of people, that's such an alien concept. Like, ati? Why I feel like I'm being interrogated.
Yeah.
and it forces them to reflect in a way. Now, it tells you something about a person also. The kinds of answers they give, I think it'll tell you a lot about them. I think if they've taken the time to reflect and they know themselves well, this would not come to them as a surprise. If anything, I think it will be welcomed because it's a chance to connect and it's a chance for them to tell you who they really are. But the majority of people, I think, would watatikisika kidogo with these kinds of questions.
First dates, like I've encountered a lot of my friends who they sort of they get into the relationship to find out who the person is. And I'm like, but
The
you
thrill.
could, yeah, and essentially especially when you actually feel some type of way for someone, it's very hard for you to like just, okay, I'll wait, I'll just be their friend for a bit, I'll try and see what they're like in a group context and all the things that you're supposed to do. It's just like, first date, second date, they have what's your 5-year plan question, and then that's it, and you're in there.
Blended.
And that, I think, is figuring stuff out while you're with someone, especially. There's an example I was given to a friend of mine. There's a married couple that we were hanging out with, and the guy would call the lady and ask her, like, what are we going to eat tonight? And sometimes they would bicker a bit. But then my other friend at that same time was having issues around violence in a relationship and all that stuff. And I'm like, they're different, like they're couples that what they're arguing about at that point that they're a couple are like somewhat much more logistical, deeper issues about how they work out being together. But they're not arguing about things that would effectively break or make their relationship. The decision to like, okay, I think there could be a relationship here. We're sorting out whether like, okay, what if we have to move to this other place? Would you come with me to this country or whatever it is? The issues are surrounding how they would make it work, and not like you're doing something actively. It's like meeting a guy who is actively, let's say, I don't know, texting some other girl for some reason, and that's something that directly affects your relationship. He's texting her in the kind of way that would, like, you're not supposed to be talking to someone else while you're with someone, or if you claim it with someone that way. And then, like, if that's what you're talking about at that stage, you're like, the existence of your relationship is what's being in question, not the logistics thereof. So they are, I think, taking more time on that end. And I think even with asking people questions, people who isolate you, people who don't want to answer a lot of questions, it comes to a question of integrity. There are people who do not want to be seen for who they are because what they are is not that great. They can't be open about like lots of things, and there's lots of ladies who find out like, oh, and he had a baby somewhere and he had this somewhere and all that after the fact. But if you've lived even just in Dar es Salaam, it's a very difficult place to hide anything. If you spend enough time with someone without dating them, which you could absolutely find out a lot of things about a person without dating them. It's just that you have to be able to decide to be patient enough not to get to that, not to move forward until you feel like you've done at least some due diligence, because there is no guarantee that it will be great, but you'd want to at least cover as many of your bases before you go far enough until it's much harder to leave, because you find yourself emotionally invested in ways that are harder to remove yourself from.
Those are really good thoughts. And I think what you're describing is the ideal. This is how we should handle relationships. What we find on the ground, something completely different. I think it comes from how we view relationships at this stage. I don't think we view them as important things as they are for us and for the other person involved. I think these days it's much more about, I'm single. Being single is a bad thing. I should get myself a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and, well, it'll make me happy, or I'll look better to my groups of friends, or whatever it is. It's not really about the relationship itself, which can be such a fulfilling thing if it is done with the right intentions. So I think that might be why we see a lot of people rushing into things that, what am I even saying? I am guilty of this. That is why you see a lot of people, including myself, rushing into things that aren't beneficial or nurturing or healthy. Yeah.
Yes, so this will be the end of episode 4. I think it's episode 4 or 5. We said 5? Wow, I'm so out of it. Okay, this will be the end of episode 5, dating red flags. I'm happy that I could get a couple of friends to share their thoughts on this, because I would not have been able to do this alone. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast, guys, and I appreciate each and every one of you for taking the time to actually be here and record this with me. Yeah. And if you've reached this far and you haven't subscribed and you haven't liked, are you proud of yourself? I don't think you are. So I think you should subscribe, like, comment, and share. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.